It was 8 p.m. in Washington, D.C. The bombers were ready. The missiles were armed. Hundreds of American warplanes were minutes away from turning Iran into rubble. The world was holding its breath. World War III was not a theory anymore. It was scheduled. And then a phone rang. Not in the White House. Not in the Pentagon. Not in Tel Aviv. In Islamabad. And in the next 90 minutes, one man stopped the most powerful military on earth. His name? Field Marshal Asim Munir, Pakistan's army chief. And this is the story the Western media does not want you to fully understand. To understand what Pakistan did, you first need to understand how close this world came to absolute catastrophe. It was February 28, 26. Donald Trump, the man who promised Americans no more wars, launched joint US-Israeli strikes on Iran. He called it the beginning of major combat operations. Within days, Iran's military hit back. They blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 20% of the entire world's oil supply flows. Think about that. 1/5 of the world's oil. Gone. Choked. Shut. Oil prices exploded. Inflation surged across America and Europe. Stock markets bled billions every single day. And Trump? He issued ultimatums. He threatened to bomb Iran's oil fields, Iran's energy infrastructure. He even said on live television that strikes on one Iranian island were done just for fun. The world watched in horror. Iran warned that any further attacks would trigger responses against desalination plants, shipping lanes, regional infrastructure. This was not a regional war anymore. This was a match being held next to a global fuel tank. Now, here's where the story gets extraordinary. While the world's superpowers were rattling their sabers, one country was quietly doing something no one else was willing to do. Pakistan. This goes back further than most people realize. In September 2025, months before the bombs even started falling, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir flew to Washington. They sat in the White House. They met Trump, J.D. Vance, and Marco Rubio face to face. Why does that matter? Because Asim Munir, a former intelligence chief who knows the dark corridors of global power, used that meeting to build something priceless. Trust. Direct access. A private line to the Oval Office. And when the war began, Pakistan immediately activated its other channel, Tehran. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi flew to Islamabad. He met Munir and Shehbaz Sharif directly. He told them Iran's red lines, its demands, its fears. Pakistan became the only country on earth with a direct, trusted private line to both sides. And Pakistan's deputy PM Ishaq Dar confirmed it publicly. He said, US-Iran indirect talks are happening through messages being relayed by Pakistan. Think about that. In the middle of a shooting war, Pakistan was the postman carrying peace letters between Washington and Tehran. Now we come to the night that changed everything. April 7th, 2026. Trump had set a hard deadline. Iran had until 8 p.m. Eastern Time to either open the Strait of Hormuz or face what Trump called a destructive force unlike anything they had seen. Just 90 minutes before that deadline, the situation was critical. Iran had not backed down. Trump's finger was, metaphorically, terrifyingly on the trigger. And in those final 90 minutes, Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir made the call. They called Trump directly. They said, Mr. President, hold off. Give us a chance. Don't send those planes tonight. And then the world stopped breathing. Trump posted on Truth Social. And these were the exact words that saved millions of lives. Based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a purse. But the story doesn't end with that one ceasefire. Because 2 weeks later, the ceasefire was about to expire again. And once again, the bombs were being prepared. And once again, Trump named the same two men who held him back. He wrote on Truth Social, upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran. 2 times, Trump publicly named Pakistan. 2 times the ceasefire held because of Islamabad. Al Jazeera called it, and I quote, Pakistan's most significant diplomatic achievement in years. And Fox News, not exactly a pro-Pakistan outlet, published a detailed report on how Asim Munir had become a key intermediary in negotiations aimed at preventing renewed conflict with Iran. 90 minutes before World War III. Pakistan stopped it. Iran's foreign minister Araghchi immediately confirmed the ceasefire. And in his statement, he said Pakistan accepted the ceasefire, and I'm quoting here, in response to the brotherly request of PM Sharif. Think about what just happened. The United States of America, the most powerful military nation in history, stood down because Pakistan asked it to. This was not a minor diplomatic footnote. This was Pakistan's most significant moment on the global stage in decades. Even the analysts who don't trust Pakistan admitted it. Washington keeps coming back to Islamabad because Pakistan has something nobody else has. It has relationships on every side of this conflict. The Americans, the Iranians, the Gulf states, the Chinese. Munir had met Trump directly at the White House. He had spoken with Iranian leadership. He had signed a mutual defense pact with Saudi Arabia. He had back-channel connections with Turkey and Egypt. This man was operating like a grandmaster chess player, and the world had barely noticed. Now let's be honest. Let's be sharp about this. Pakistan's role here was not purely selfless. Pakistan is a country that needed American goodwill desperately. For its economy, for IMF negotiations, for its own regional security. And by positioning itself as the peacemaker, Pakistan achieved something remarkable. It rehabilitated its image after decades of being labeled as a state that played both sides. After years of accusations about Taliban safe havens and nuclear proliferation, suddenly the world was watching Pakistan stop a war. And Asim Munir, this is a man who was elevated to field marshal partly because of how he handled the India-Pakistan crisis in 2025. A conflict that itself was defused through back-channel diplomacy. A conflict where Pakistan downed Indian jets and then agreed to a ceasefire, and Trump himself claimed credit for brokering it. Munir understood something that seasoned diplomats spend careers learning. In chaos, the person who controls the communication channel controls the outcome. And as of today, June 2026, the war is still not fully over. Iran and the US are still negotiating. The Strait of Hormuz situation is still fragile. Qatar is now carrying messages too. The deal is largely negotiated, but Trump himself admits the final details are still being worked out. Pakistan's job is not done. Munir's phone has not stopped ringing. Here's the bottom line. When the history books are written about the Iran war of 2026, there will be a chapter about the bombs, the blockades, and Trump's ultimatums. But there will also be a chapter that the Western media is already glossing over, about the country that stood in the gap. About the phone calls made from Islamabad in the dark hours of the night. About a field marshal who had the trust of both Washington and Tehran at the same time. About Pakistan. Now, the war is not over. A full deal has not been signed. There is still enormous risk on the table, and the next 30 to 60 days of negotiations will determine whether this fragile peace holds or whether the world slides back toward the abyss. But for now, the bombs that were supposed to fall on April 7th, 2026 at 8 p.m., they didn't fall. And somewhere in Islamabad, in a room most of us will never see, that decision was made. Pakistan saved the world from World War III, and almost nobody is talking about it. If this story gave you something the mainstream media didn't, smash that like button right now. Subscribe, because we cover the real stories, the angles that others miss. And drop in the comments. Do you think Pakistan gets the credit it deserves for this? Let me know. I'll see you in the next one.